There is a question I want you to sit with for a moment. Think about the most talented person you have ever known. Maybe it was someone you went to school with. Maybe it was a colleague. Maybe, if you're being honest, it was you. Someone with real ability, real potential. Someone who worked harder than everyone around them, who clearly deserved more than they were given. And yet, somehow, they never quite made it. They were passed over, quietly sidelined, or worse, suddenly and completely removed from the very place they had worked so hard to reach. Have you ever wondered why that happens? It is one of the most painful and least discussed realities of ambition. And Robert Greene, in one of the most studied books on strategy ever written, opens with the answer, not halfway through, not buried in a later chapter. He places it at the very beginning, as if to say, if you understand nothing else, understand this. The first law of power is simple in its language and devastating in its truth. Never outshine the master. Let that land for a moment. We live in a world that tells us to be the best, to stand out, to show our worth. From the time we are children, we are taught that excellence is its own reward, that if you are good enough, talented enough, hardworking enough, the right people will notice and the right doors will open. It is a beautiful idea, and it is, in the world of power, dangerously incomplete. Because here is what that idea leaves out. Every room you walk into has a hierarchy. Every organization, every team, every relationship has someone at the top. And that person, regardless of how confident they appear, regardless of how generously they speak about talent and meritocracy, carries within them something deeply human, a need to feel superior, a need to feel that their position is secure, a need to feel that they are, in the room, irreplaceable. The moment you threaten that feeling, even unintentionally, you have made an enemy of the one person who had the power to elevate you. Greene tells the story of Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister of France under the young King Louis XIV. Fouquet was brilliant. He was cultured, politically gifted, and genuinely capable. In 1661, hoping to secure the king's favor, he organized a celebration at his estate, Vaux-le-Vicomte, that was, by every account, extraordinary. The finest food, the most celebrated entertainment, architecture that left guests speechless. It was the grandest party France had seen in a generation, and it ended Fouquet's life as a free man. Louis XIV looked around that estate and felt something no king is ever supposed to feel. He felt outshone. Within 3 weeks, Fouquet was arrested on charges of corruption. He spent the remaining 19 years of his life in prison, not because he had plotted against the crown, not because he was a threat in any conventional sense, but because in one magnificent evening he had made the most powerful man in France feel small. This is the quiet brutality of the first law. Now here is what Greene is not saying. He is not asking you to be mediocre. He is not suggesting you hide your intelligence or shrink yourself into invisibility. That is not strategy, that is self-abandonment. What he is asking is far more sophisticated. He is asking you to redirect your brilliance, to frame your achievements as extensions of your leader's vision, to make your wins feel like their wins, to let them stand in the light while you quietly, patiently build everything behind it. Galileo understood this. When he developed his telescope, he did not simply publish his findings and wait for the world to applaud. He dedicated his discovery to the Medici family. He named the moons of Jupiter after them. He took one of the greatest scientific achievements of his age and wrapped it in the language of flattery and loyalty. And in doing so, he bought himself protection, patronage, and time. That is not weakness. That is mastery. The most important thing to understand about Law 1 is that it is not about the master. It is about you. It is about developing the awareness to read a room, to understand the emotional undercurrents of power, and to move through them with grace rather than force. Talent alone has never been enough. The world is full of talented people who are quietly removed from the game before they ever had the chance to play it fully. The ones who lasted, the ones who built something real and lasting, they understood something that most ambitious people never stop long enough to learn. In the presence of those above you, let them shine. Your time will come, but only if you are still in the room. There is something deeply uncomfortable about what Robert Greene says in this law, not because it is shocking, but because, somewhere beneath the discomfort, most people already know it is true. They have lived a version of it. They have felt the particular sting that only comes from one specific kind of betrayal, not from an enemy, not from a stranger, but from someone they trusted completely. A friend, a partner, someone who knew them well. And that is precisely where Greene begins. We are taught from the earliest age that friendship is sacred, that loyalty is the highest virtue, that the people who love us are the people we should lean on, trust, and bring close when the stakes are highest. It is one of the most human instincts we carry, and in the architecture of power, it is one of the most exploited. Greene does not tell you that friendship is meaningless. He tells you something far more nuanced and far more useful. He tells you that friendship and professional trust are two entirely different currencies, and confusing one for the other has been the downfall of kings, CEOs, and careful men who should have known better. Here is the core of the law. When you elevate a friend to a position of power, when you hire them, promote them, or place them inside your inner circle because of personal affection, you are not rewarding loyalty. You are creating obligation. An obligation over time breeds resentment. Your friend did not earn their position through competition. They were given it. And deep within them, whether they acknowledge it or not, they know that. That knowledge quietly erodes something. It makes them sensitive to your authority in ways that a neutral professional never would be. Every correction feels like a personal slight. Every criticism lands harder than it should. And when the pressure of the role exceeds what they can carry, the friendship itself becomes the wound. Greene offers one of history's most instructive examples through the story of Michael III, Emperor of Byzantium in the 9th century. Michael elevated his close friend Basilius from complete obscurity, a man of no rank, no wealth, and no political standing, and gave him everything: position, access, power, proximity to the throne itself. Basilius repaid him by having him murdered. It is a brutal illustration, but Greene's point is not that friends are inherently treacherous. His point is that the dynamics of power corrupt the dynamics of affection. When you place someone in your debt so completely, when the imbalance between what you gave and what they could ever return becomes too vast, something shifts. Gratitude has a ceiling. Beyond that ceiling lives something far more dangerous. Now consider the second half of this law. because it is the part most people overlook entirely. Learn how to use enemies. This is where Greene becomes genuinely counterintuitive. An enemy, he argues, is in many ways a more reliable ally than a friend, not because they like you, they do not, but because their motivations are transparent. They have something to prove. They carry a competitive energy that, when properly directed, produces results that comfort never could. There is a well-documented pattern in political history of leaders who appointed their fiercest critics to positions of responsibility, not out of generosity, but out of strategy. A former enemy working inside your structure has everything to gain by performing well and everything to lose by betraying you. They arrive without the entitlement of friendship. They carry no expectation of special treatment. And because they were once against you, their loyalty, when it comes, is earned rather than assumed. Greene points to the practice of keeping a reformed enemy close as one of the most quietly powerful moves in the entire game. It disarms them publicly. It signals confidence, and it converts opposition into investment. What this law is really teaching is something deeper than politics or professional strategy. It is teaching discernment, the ability to separate emotion from decision-making, to look at the people around you clearly, not through the warm filter of affection, but through the clear lens of capability, motivation, and alignment. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean treating relationships as transactions or moving through the world with calculated detachment. It means understanding that the people you love and the people you trust with power are not always the same people. The greatest leaders in history were not those who surrounded themselves with friends. They were those who surrounded themselves with the right people and had the wisdom to know the difference. Friendship is one of life's most profound gifts. Protect it, cherish it, but keep it separate from the room where power is decided, because the moment you blur that line, you do not just risk your position, you risk the friendship itself. There is a habit most people have that they are completely unaware of. When they are excited about something, they talk about it. When they have a plan, they share it. When they are working toward a goal, they announce it to friends, to colleagues, to anyone who will listen. It feels natural. It feels honest. In a world that celebrates authenticity and transparency, it even feels virtuous. But in the world of power, it is one of the most costly habits a person can have. Robert Greene's third law does not ask you to lie. It does not ask you to deceive in the crude, obvious sense of the word. What it asks is something far more disciplined, far more elegant, and far more difficult. It asks you to master the art of concealment, to move through the world with your intentions protected, your plans guarded, and your next move known only to you. Think about what happens the moment you reveal your intentions to someone. The second your goal is visible, it becomes a target. People who are threatened by your ambition now have something specific to undermine. People who are competitive with you now have a direction to work against. Even well-meaning people, without realizing it, begin to subtly reshape their behavior around what they now know you want. Information is leverage, and the moment you hand it out freely, you have transferred a piece of your power to everyone who received it. Greene illustrates this principle through one of history's most elegant strategists, Otto von Bismarck, the architect of modern Germany. Bismarck was a master of saying almost nothing directly. He moved in half-statements and suggestions and carefully constructed ambiguity. His opponents could never quite pin down his next move because he never gave them the raw material to work with. While others debated what he intended, he was already executing. By the time his direction became clear, it was too late to stop it. This is the power of concealment in its highest form. Not secrecy for the sake of paranoia, but strategic silence in service of execution. There is a subtler dimension to this law that Greene explores with particular depth. He talks about the art of using decoys, of sending people in the wrong direction, not through elaborate lies, but through the careful management of appearances. The principle is this: people do not need to be lied to in order to be misdirected. They simply need to be given something plausible to believe. A visible goal that is not the real goal. A stated intention that masks the actual one. A surface narrative that keeps attention occupied while the real work happens underneath. History's most effective operators understood this intuitively. Cardinal Richelieu, the 17th century, French statesman who quietly controlled the most powerful court in Europe, was famous for revealing nothing of substance while always appearing open and engaged. He listened more than he spoke. He asked more than he answered. And in the space created by his silence, others filled in the gaps with their own assumptions. He had carefully engineered them to make. Now consider what concealment requires of you personally, because this is where the law becomes genuinely challenging. To conceal your intentions consistently, you must first develop control over your own excitement, and that is harder than it sounds. When something is working, the impulse to share it is powerful. When a plan is coming together, the desire for acknowledgement is real. When you are proud of what you are building, silence feels almost unnatural. But Greene is asking you to sit with that impulse and let it pass. To understand that the satisfaction of sharing prematurely is almost never worth the strategic cost of what you have revealed. The most composed people in any room are not the ones who have nothing going on. They are the ones who have learned to carry their ambitions quietly, internally, with patience and discipline. There is a certain confidence that comes from this, a settled, unhurried quality that the most powerful people in any room tend to carry. It is not arrogance. It is the quiet assurance of someone who knows exactly where they are going and has no need for anyone else to validate the direction. The world rewards transparency in personal relationships. In friendship, in love, and family, openness builds trust and deepens connection. These are real and important things, but power operates on different principles. In the arena of ambition, strategy, and competition, your intentions are not a gift to be shared. They are an asset to be protected. Move in silence. Execute with precision, and let the results announce what your words never did, because the most powerful moment in any strategy is not when you reveal your plan. It is when your plan has already succeeded, and no one saw it coming. There is a moment most people have experienced at least once. You are in a conversation, a negotiation, an interview, a difficult discussion with someone who holds more power than you in that moment. Things are going well. The silence arrives, and instead of letting it sit, instead of allowing it to breathe, you fill it. You add another sentence, then another. You over-explain, over-justify, over-share. And somewhere in that flood of words, something shifts. The other person's expression changes slightly. The energy in the room tilts, and you feel it, that quiet, sinking awareness that you have just said too much. It is one of the most common and most expensive mistakes in the game of power, and Robert Greene addresses it with a law that is deceptively simple in its instruction and profound in its implications. Always say less than necessary. Words, Greene argues, are not neutral. Every sentence you speak is a piece of information transferred. Every explanation you offer is a window opened into your thinking. Every unnecessary elaboration hands the person across from you a little more material to work with, to analyze, to use, to turn against you if the moment calls for it. The person who speaks too much reveals their insecurities. They signal that they need to be understood, need to be validated, need to fill the space because silence makes them uncomfortable. And in any dynamic where power is present, discomfort is readable. It is exploitable. The moment someone across the table understands that silence unsettles you, they have a tool they did not have before. Contrast that with the person who speaks deliberately, who chooses their words with care, who answers a question cleanly and then stops. There is something immediately compelling about that kind of presence. It suggests depth. It suggests confidence. It suggests that beneath the surface, there is much more that is simply not being shared, and people are endlessly drawn to what they cannot fully access. Greene tells the story of Coriolanus, the Roman general whose extraordinary military record made him one of the most celebrated figures of his time. Coriolanus was fearless in battle. He was disciplined, capable, and genuinely accomplished. But he could not control his words. In political settings, in public forums, he said exactly what he thought, bluntly, completely, without filter or restraint. He believed that honesty and directness were virtues, and that his record spoke loudly enough to protect him from the consequences of his tongue. He was wrong. His unguarded speech made him enemies at every level of Roman society. It revealed his contempt for the common people in terms so stark and so complete that there was no room left for interpretation. He was eventually exiled, not because of what he did, but because of what he said. His words became the weapon that his enemies used to dismantle everything his actions had built. It is a pattern that repeats across centuries, across cultures, across every arena where power is contested. The battlefield and the boardroom share this truth equally. Loose words are not just a social liability. They are a strategic one. There is a subtler dimension to this law that goes beyond simply speaking less. It is about understanding the architecture of a conversation and where power lives within it. In almost every exchange, the person who speaks more is the person who is working harder. They are filling space, managing impressions, seeking connection or approval. The person who speaks less is the person who is observing, absorbing, waiting, and patience in conversation is a form of power that very few people ever fully develop. Greene points to the courts of Louis XIV as a masterclass in this dynamic. The king was famously measured in his speech. His statements were rare enough to carry enormous weight. When he finally spoke, people leaned in. Every word was parsed, analyzed, and remembered. His silence before speaking created anticipation. His economy of language created authority. The less he said, the more every word mattered. This is the paradox at the heart of Law 4. The less you say, the more powerful each word becomes. Scarcity creates value in economics, in art, and in human communication. This law asks something genuinely difficult of most people, because the urge to communicate is not just strategic, it is emotional. We speak to connect. We explain to be understood. We share because we want to be known. These are deeply human impulses, and there is nothing wrong with them in the right context. But Greene is asking you to develop a second layer of awareness, to pause before you speak and ask yourself a quiet question. Does this sentence serve me, or does it simply make me feel better in this moment? Because more often than not, the sentence that makes you feel better in the moment is the sentence that costs you later. Speak when it matters. Choose your words as carefully as you choose your actions. And when the silence comes, and it will come, let it sit, because the most powerful thing you can say is often nothing at all. And the most dangerous words you will ever speak are the ones you said simply because you could not bear the quiet.